Imagine walking into a crowded market with the same silver coin you used last month. The baker knows you, the loaf is the same size, the wheat came from the same fields, and no modern bank has changed an interest rate. But when you place the coin on the counter, the baker shakes his head. Yesterday, one coin bought one loaf. Today, he wants two. By winter, he may want four. Your wages have not changed. Your savings chest contains exactly the same number of coins. Yet somehow every coin inside it has become smaller without physically shrinking. There is no central bank in this world. There is no finance ministry publishing an inflation report, no economist calculating a consumer price index, and perhaps no paper money at all. Still, prices can rise, savings can lose purchasing power, wages can fall behind, and a government can quietly transfer wealth from its people to itself. Inflation is far older than the institutions now expected to control it. The simplest answer is also the most misleading. Rulers put less silver into coins. That happened many times, and it could be devastating. But inflation before central banks had several engines. A mint could manufacture more coins from the same metal. New mines could pour gold and silver into an economy. A war could increase spending while destroying farms. A failed harvest could reduce the food available to buy. Population could grow faster than production. Merchants could lose faith in a currency and demand more of it. In China, governments could even issue too much paper money centuries before Europe adopted it widely. To understand the system, begin with the loaf. If frost destroys half the wheat harvest and only bread becomes expensive, that is mainly a shortage of bread. Economists distinguish a rise in one price from inflation, which means a broader rise in the general price level. Pre-modern people did not make that distinction with a monthly index, but they experienced it. When grain, cloth, rent, animals, tools, and labor all demanded more units of money, the problem was no longer one unlucky crop. Either many goods had become scarce at once, spending had outrun production, or the unit used to measure value had weakened. Money is not the same thing as wealth. More coins do not create more wheat, houses, iron, or hours of labor. Money is a claim that helps one person exchange what they have produced for something another person produced. If the number of claims rises much faster than the goods available, sellers can demand more claims for each good. The kingdom appears to possess more money, but it has not necessarily become richer. It may simply be counting the same real wealth with larger numbers. In a metallic currency, this relationship was hidden inside the coin itself. A silver coin had at least two values. One came from the metal it contained, the other came from the authority stamped upon it. A ruler's portrait declared that this piece had an official name and could discharge a debt or tax of a stated amount. When confidence was strong, people accepted the stamp without weighing every transaction. The coin moved faster because royal authority saved everyone the trouble of testing it. The mint made that trust profitable. Suppose a pound of silver could be turned into 100 coins after production costs. The ruler might charge a fee for minting them, a source of revenue known as seigniorage. A moderate charge paid for metalworkers, dyes, guards, and administration. But a ruler desperate for money could go further. Mix copper into the silver, reduce the weight of each coin, and the same pound of precious metal might support 150 or 200 official coins. The additional coins could pay soldiers, purchase horses, or settle palace debts. Nothing real had been produced by that operation. The ruler had created extra monetary claims against the kingdom's existing output. At first, the trick might work. Soldiers spent the new coins at their official value. Tax collectors accepted them because the government ordered them to. A farmer, far from the mint, might not immediately know that the newest issue contained less silver. The crown received goods and labor before prices fully adjusted. This is why debasement acted like a hidden tax. An ordinary tax takes coins openly. Debasement allows the state to spend new coins first and leaves the public holding money that later buys less. The loss is spread across anyone paid in the weakened currency. It is politically attractive because the ruler can obtain resources without announcing a new levy, but economically dangerous because the tax attacks the measuring stick used in every market. People were not helpless. Money changers scratch coins, rang them, clip samples, compared their color, and weighed them on small balances. Merchants knew foreign coinages and adjusted exchange rates. When an old coin contained more silver than a new coin with the same legal value, people had a reason to save, melt, or export the better one and spend the worse one. The strongest coins disappeared from daily exchange while the weakest circulated. Centuries later, this pattern became famous as the idea that bad money drives out good, but market traders understood the behavior long before it received a name. The disappearance of good coins made the problem accelerate. A seller who expected to receive light or impure money raised the number of coins demanded. A foreign supplier discounted the kingdom's currency. Workers asked for higher nominal wages, though usually after food prices had already moved. Creditors tried to write contracts in a more stable coin or in a fixed weight of silver. Everyone spent more time testing money and less time trusting it. Transactions became slower and costlier, even as people tried to spend weak money faster. Ancient Rome offers the most famous version of this story, but it must be told carefully. Roman emperors altered the weight and fineness of silver coinage over centuries. That did not produce an immediate mechanical jump in every price after every reduction. The empire was expanding, monetization was spreading, and demand for coins could absorb a larger supply. A coin could remain accepted above the market value of its metal because taxes, law, and habit supported it. Debasement created the possibility of inflation. Political and economic conditions determined when that possibility became a crisis. By the 3rd century, those conditions were brutal. Emperors rose and fell rapidly. Civil wars and invasions demanded enormous military spending. Soldiers expected pay and bonuses, while disease disrupted trade and insecurity damaged production. The state needed more spendable money at the same moment the real economy struggled to provide more goods. Over time, though not smoothly, silver-looking issues contained less actual silver. The Antoninianus, introduced as a higher value coin, eventually became a mostly base metal object with a thin, silvered appearance. Now return to the army. If the government doubles the number written on a soldier's pay but finances it with weak coin, the soldier is not necessarily twice as rich. He takes the money to a market where sellers have learned what it contains. They demand more coins for grain, leather, and wine. The state must then raise pay again or force suppliers to deliver goods. Each response places greater pressure on the mint, taxes, and countryside. What looks like a solution to the military budget becomes part of the next budget emergency. Evidence from the Roman world is incomplete and varies by region, so dramatic claims about one universal inflation rate should be treated cautiously. Egypt's papyri preserve unusual records of wheat prices, rents, and wages, while other provinces leave fragments. What is clear is a long period of monetary disorder and highly unstable nominal prices. In some places, contracts shifted toward commodities or stable units as confidence in coin weakened. Taxes and requisitions in kind also helped the state provision armies, but those systems long predated the crisis and did not replace money. Diocletian attempted a grand answer after the 3rd century crisis. He reformed the coinage and in 301 issued an edict setting maximum prices for a vast range of goods, services, and wages. The logic was understandable. If sellers were forbidden to charge more, perhaps the spiral would stop. Severe penalties were meant to make the ceilings credible, but a legal maximum cannot create missing wheat or restore silver to a coin. If the official price is below what a producer will accept, trade may move into hiding, barter, or illegal sales. As Diocletian's hostile contemporary Lactantius claimed, enforcement can punish a merchant, but it cannot command a harvest. The edict did not permanently stabilize the currency. Later reforms, especially Constantine's dependable gold solidus, anchored taxation, and major payments, though base coin and regional prices could remain unstable. Sometimes the cause began in the sky rather than the mint. Pre-modern economies depended heavily on harvests. Too much rain, too little rain, crop disease, or war-damaged fields could sharply reduce grain supplies. Because bread consumed a large share of an ordinary household's income, a harvest shock was more than one inconvenient price movement. Expensive food changed wages, rents, migration, animal sales, and demand for nearly everything else. Imagine a town supplied by 10,000 sacks of grain. An approaching army buys or seizes 3,000, flood destroys another 2,000. The town still contains the same number of coins and mouths, but only half the normal grain. Buyers compete, the price rises. Craftsmen then demand more pay because eating costs more. Employers raise the prices of shoes, barrels, and cloth to cover wages. Landlords and transporters adjust. A supply shock that began with grain can spread through the entire local price structure. War combined nearly every inflationary force. Governments minted weaker coins to pay troops. Armies consumed food faster than local farms could replace it. Fighting destroyed fields, bridges, and workshops. Merchants charged for the risk of moving goods through unsafe territory. Refugees increased demand inside protected towns. Taxes rose while production fell. Even with a perfectly honest coin, more military purchasing power chasing fewer civilian goods could raise prices. Peace could create a different pressure. As population recovered and towns expanded, demand for grain and housing strained a slow-growing supply. More workers did not automatically mean cheaper living if the best land was occupied and extra food came from poorer fields. Population growth helped turn expanding money and credit into higher prices, though historians dispute how much it could raise the general price level by itself. Metal was not required for inflation either. Centuries before a European central bank existed, Chinese states used paper currency. Paper solved a real problem. Copper coins were heavy, long-distance commerce was growing, and governments needed efficient ways to make payments. A note could move value across an empire more easily than strings of metal. Its usefulness depended on rules governing issue, redemption, taxation, and public confidence. Under the Song and Yuan dynasties, paper money demonstrated both the power and danger of that invention. When notes were limited and accepted for taxes, they could support trade. When fiscal pressure, especially war and civil conflict, pushed governments to issue far more, their market value fell. Sellers demanded additional notes or preferred silver and other alternatives. The paper did not fail because it lacked intrinsic metal. It failed when the issuing state weakened confidence that the supply and future acceptability would remain controlled. Medieval Europe made those questions unusually visible because money was fragmented. Dozens of authorities could mint coins. A merchant might receive one city's pennies, another prince's groschen and foreign gold pieces in the same journey. Prices were often quoted in a money of account, while actual payment arrived in a mixture of coins. Money changes converted not just names, but weights, fineness, and political reputation. Henry VIII made that calculation in 16th century England. Wars and royal spending consumed resources. The Great Debasement began under Henry in 1544 and continued under Edward VI until 1551, when the silver standard reached its low point. By replacing much of the silver with copper, the crown turned a given stock of bullion into far more legal money and spent the difference. It was medieval-style war finance in a commercializing economy. The policy left one of monetary history's most memorable images. On some coins bearing Henry's portrait, the thin silver-rich surface wore away most visibly from the king's projecting nose, revealing the copper beneath. The ruler became associated with the nickname Old Coppernose. A coin designed to display royal credibility instead advertised the violation of it. Yet even here, the relationship between debasement and prices was not a simple switch. Research on the period shows that prices did not rise in perfect proportion the moment a coin's silver was reduced. Harvest conditions, overseas exchange, existing contracts, coin shortages, and the broader European price movement all mattered. Debasement still generated major fiscal revenue and weakened monetary confidence, but history refuses to behave like a laboratory with only one variable. Elizabeth later withdrew debased silver and restored sterling coin, showing that the Crown and Mint could rebuild trust without a central bank. England was already inside a much larger transformation known as the Price Revolution. Across much of Europe, prices rose for generations during the 16th and early 17th centuries. The The total increase was enormous by pre-modern standards, though the annual pace often looked modest beside a modern inflation crisis. A rise of roughly 1 or 2% a year can feel slow in one season and still multiply prices over a lifetime. American silver did not start the earliest phase. European prices were rising before the largest shipments, but from the 1550s onward, vast flows from American mines amplified and sustained the price revolution. Bullion arriving in Seville did not remain in Spain. The monarchy paid foreign bankers and armies, buyers purchased imports, and merchants moved silver through Antwerp and Genoa toward Asian markets where it was highly valued. More silver meant Europe could mint and circulate more monetary claims. If the stock of goods did not grow as quickly, prices could rise. 16th century observers began to grasp the relationship. The French thinker Jean Bodin argued that the abundance of gold and silver was an important cause of high prices. He did not possess a modern statistical office, yet he understood that a flood of money could make each unit command less. American bullion was powerful, but it was not acting alone. European silver mining had expanded, population was recovering from late medieval losses, cities and armies grew. Credit instruments allowed purchasing power to move beyond the physical stock of coin. Harvests varied, governments borrowed, and international trade connected local prices. Historians continue to debate the weight of each factor, which is precisely the point. Inflation was a system, not a single chest of Spanish silver emptied onto a market. Spain itself reveals why receiving treasure is not the same as becoming permanently rich. Bullion gave the crown spending power, but it also supported war, debt service, and imports. Domestic prices rose, and foreign goods could become attractive. Silver flowed outward to creditors and suppliers. The metal allowed the monarchy to command resources for a time, yet it could not by itself create a productive tax base large enough to match every imperial ambition. For ordinary people, the price revolution did not arrive as a theory. It arrived as a gap. The price of food could move before a worker's customary wage. A labourer might receive more pennies than his grandfather while affording less bread. This difference between nominal and real income is the central cruelty of inflation. The number paid can rise, and the life purchased by that number can shrink. Debtors could gain. If a farmer borrowed 100 units when that sum bought 20 cattle, then repaid 100 units years later when it bought only 10, the real burden had fallen, provided his own income rose with prices. Inflation transferred purchasing power from the creditor to the debtor without altering the number written in the contract. That is one reason monetary change has always been political. Every attempt to stabilize or alter money creates winners as well as losers. Landlords experience both sides. A lord receiving a fixed money rent could lose as prices climbed. A tenant locked into that nominal rent might gain. But landlords able to renegotiate rents, demand payments in kind, or exploit scarce land could protect themselves. Merchants holding inventories might benefit when selling prices rose, yet could be ruined if replacement costs or exchange rates moved against them. There was no universal class of inflation winners. Timing, contracts, assets, and bargaining power mattered. In a royal debasement, the ruler could win first. New coins entered through state spending before every price adjusted. Soldiers and suppliers near the source spent it next. People farthest from the mint received the additional money later, after some prices had risen. Inflation therefore changed not only the average price level, but the path through which resources moved. The first spender could command yesterday's prices. The last recipient faced tomorrow's. Expectations made that path faster. If a merchant believed next month's coins would contain less silver, he raised today's price or demanded payment in a better currency. If workers expected bread to rise, they sought higher wages. If everyone tried to exchange weak money for goods immediately, the currency circulated faster and lost value more quickly. Trust could collapse before the mint completed its next issue. Central Europe experienced an extreme version during the Kipper and Whipper crisis around 1619 to 1623. As rulers entered the 30 Years' War, mints multiplied and small coins were aggressively debased. Operators used tipping scales to identify full-weight coins. culled and melted them, mixed the silver with copper, then spent the weakened new coins across borders. Neighbours faced a vicious choice: accept bad money and lose good silver, or debase their own currency in defence. The result was a monetary arms race. Each authority could gain temporarily by passing weakened coins to someone else. Collectively, they damaged the entire regional system. Prices and exchange rates became chaotic. Salaries and taxes lost meaning. Contemporary anger focused on moneyers, changers, and rulers because the currency itself seemed to be attacking daily life. No central banker entered the room and raised a policy rate. The crisis eased when authorities closed or restrained mints, withdrew kipper coins, and returned toward the older Augsburg standard. Debasement had become self-defeating. As ever weaker coins lost acceptability, credibility returned only when issuers surrendered the trick that had destroyed it. That answer explains one way inflation was stopped before central banks: recoinage. A government could announce a reliable weight and fineness, call in inferior money, and issue new coins. But reform created a difficult question. Who would absorb the loss between the old coin's legal value and its actual metal? If the state accepted every bad coin at full value, taxpayers carried the cost. If holders received only the metal value, households holding cash were punished. Monetary repair was never free. It decided who paid for the earlier deception. A second defense was to keep accounts in a more stable unit than the coins physically circulating. Merchants could specify payment by weight of silver, use trusted foreign coins, or adjust exchange tables. Public banks in some commercial cities later provided bank money linked to accepted standards, helping merchants escape the confusion of worn and debased pieces. These institutions were not yet modern central banks managing a national inflation target, but they created islands of reliable accounting. A third defense attacked scarcity rather than money. Towns stored grain, regulated emergency sales, opened reserves, or tried to prevent hoarding. Governments reduced internal barriers or imported food when local harvests failed. These measures could soften a shortage if supplies actually existed elsewhere. They failed when officials treated every high price as a crime or prevented merchants from earning enough to risk bringing grain into a hungry region. The deepest defense was fiscal. A ruler who could fund ordinary spending through credible taxes and borrowing had less need to exploit the mint. A state that promised sound coin while running an impossible war budget had made only half a reform. Merchants watched the treasury because tomorrow's debasement was often hidden inside today's deficit. Before central banks, responsibility for price stability was therefore scattered. The ruler controlled coin standards, mint officials controlled production. Tax authorities determined what money the state would accept. Towns supervised markets. Merchants and money changers set practical exchange rates. Landowners, guilds, and courts shaped contracts. Harvests and international metal flows moved beyond any one authority's control. There was no single institution to blame and no single lever to pull. Pre-modern societies had no national market or typical consumer basket. A besieged town could see grain prices explode while a distant district did not. Coins bearing one name changed across time and place, and many payments occurred in kind. Historians reconstruct prices from scattered records rather than millions of purchases. The broad pattern is real, but exact figures demand caution. Return to the market. The baker now demands 4 coins. One part of the increase may come from copper, hidden inside what used to be silver. Another may come from soldiers buying grain. Another from a poor harvest, a growing town, or merchants expecting the next coin to be worse. The 4 coins reveal the result, but they do not identify one cause. Now follow the coins to 4 people. The soldier receives them first and buys before every seller adjusts. The baker spends them on grain that has already become expensive. The laborer waits months for a wage increase and eats less in the meantime. The widow opens a savings chest accumulated over 20 years and discovers that the same careful pile now funds only 5. Inflation has rearranged claims on real goods without holding a public vote. Modern central banks did not invent the fight against inflation. Stable coinage, mint discipline, fiscal restraint, Grain reserves, recoinage, and credible units of account were earlier attempts to solve pieces of the same problem. What central banking eventually did was concentrate monetary responsibility. It created institutions able to influence the supply and price of money across a national system, support payments, and, much later, publicly commit to price stability. That concentration improved the tools but did not abolish the old forces. A central bank cannot harvest wheat, end a war, or instantly build more houses. Modern inflation can still combine excessive demand, supply shocks, fiscal choices, and expectations. The ancient baker would recognize the argument even if he did not recognize the terminology. The final lesson is hidden in the coin on his counter. Its value never came only from the silver, and never came only from the king's face. It came from a network of belief that other people would accept it, that taxes could be paid with it, that tomorrow's issue would not be secretly worse, and that goods would remain available to buy. Break enough parts of that belief and prices begin to speak the truth the ruler tried to conceal. Long before central banks, inflation could begin in a mint, a mine, a battlefield, a paper workshop, or a field without rain. It could enrich a treasury before emptying a household. It could rescue a debtor, ruin a saver, and turn one honest loaf into a public argument about the meaning of money. The institution was new. The danger was not. Before anyone could change an interest rate, people already knew what it felt like to wake with the same wage, count the same coins, and discover that yesterday's life now cost twice as much.